Hi, everybody. Did you have fun? Hey, woo! So, Katie Mitchell made it to film school. She's here. Yay. Mission accomplished. There we go. All right, well, we're going to introduce the people here who created this film, and we're going to tell stories. Just so I get everybody's names right. Okay, I'll introduce first Phil Lord, who was one of the producer-directors. Here we go. And Chris Miller, who's the other producer-director. And Mike Rianda, who's the writer.
And director.
All right. Here we go.
Here we go. Hey, everybody.
Hey.
Thanks for coming out. This is a beautiful theater.
Should we do just for this? Okay, so.
Is that okay?
We'll
Are we
all do
okay?
it.
You guys okay? Let us know.
We're all vaxxed here. That's what we're all. All right. So, talk to us about how the genesis of this project. Like, where this, because, it's so different than Spider-Verse and the other films you've done. It's like, it was a real kind of like a segue from like your normal kind of stuff. So, what's the origin of this project?
Well, the origin on at least on my end was
Michael was born.
I was born. I am a art school going to maniac like you all. Thank you for coming and watching our movie. I ran here and I needed the water, but yeah, no. I sort of had a similar experience to Katie Mitchell. I said the greatest struggle in my life was like, my dad isn't happy that I'm going to art school. And I made a movie about it to shame him. No, I really made a movie about it to honor him and sort of honor my whole family, because sort of as my brain was sort of the moment I left for college, I remember like hugging. I was such a jerk in high school, and I'm like, my mom's like, "Oh, I clean your clothes." And I'm like, "Get out of my room, Mom!" It's like she delivers beautiful laundry. But then when I was saying goodbye to them at college, I was like, tears were streaming down my face, and like my brain had grown an extra wrinkle to realize, like, oh my God, these people did everything for me. And sort of as I was also having nephews and stuff, I was sort of seeing things from my dad's point of view for the first time, and I thought it would, be interesting to make a movie about that. And that also, I'm not very creative, so I did the only thing I knew how to do. And then, miraculously, I was making this movie and sort of struggling through it. And we had made a version, and we were really excited about it. And the studio was like, "Oh boy, there's no X-Men in this one. What are we gonna do?" And then
The X-Men.
and then the X-Men of animation swooped in and helped
There were
us get
only
it made.
2 X-Men.
They're like the Wonder
X-Men. Yeah. Speaking of your, growing your brain, you know that like men don't develop empathy until like deep into their 20s.
There you go.
And then, like literally, their brains are smaller
That makes
when they
sense.
go to college, and then they grow slowly until they
Yeah.
become human beings.
Yeah.
That's what you were feeling it
I
happening
know,
literally
it was
at that
happening
moment.
live. I was like,
Were
what's
you-
happening?
Yeah, you were early.
Yeah. That's good. I'll take it.
Totally
So
believe it.
then we jumped on board and we're like, "Oh, this will be fun and easy. This is a very talented person, and we can help him." And then 3 years of toil
Pain.
later, we had a movie, and we were all really proud of it. And so that's the genesis.
Very cool. So, and I was thinking too. So, Mike, so you went to CalArts. Like, were you animation or like?
Yeah, I was in the character animation program.
Okay. So what do you like about writing that's different from?
Oh yeah. I would also like to say, just for anyone who's in art school or film school, I was the lowest score. They score everyone's portfolios, and I got the lowest in CalArts history, which I wear as a badge of honor. I'm gonna show the people, like, I made a movie. Dan Hansen, thanks for being a great teacher. He was a great. But no. I don't even remember the question. I'm sorry.
Nowhere to go but up, though,
Writing.
with that.
It was about writing.
Yes. No. So weirdly, I just loved cartoons so much that I was like, and in art school, I realized that like everyone else was better at drawing than me. but I was like, I care the most about people laughing at my stories. So I just followed that mad will. And it sort of led to, I made these shorts that were relatively popular for the, how those go. And then I got a job on the show Gravity Falls on the Disney Channel. And oh, thank you, guys. You guys are the right age. Nice. A little older, a little younger, you'll have no idea what I'm talking about. But and then in that job, we sort of learned to write and sort of really learned story structure. And it was like going to school because we made 23 little mini movies, and I got a real taste for it. And I was after making all those, I was sort of naive enough to think I could make a movie on my own. And then it was really hard, and it took these guys and Jeff Rowe, who co-wrote it with me and co-directed it with me, and just sort of like all of us pushing a boulder up the cliff. And I was just thinking as I was running, I was like, thank God I like this movie, because I would be so sad right now if I didn't, and then I had to answer a bunch of questions about it. So.
But I can attest that Mike is a maniac, and that was part of why we wanted to work together, was because when you're working on something like this, you have it's such an iterative process, as you know, animation. It takes you get a lot of bites at the apple. You get a lot of chances to look at it and review it and change it and change it and change it and change it. And our philosophy has been on everything that we've done is to not give up until every moment is special, every scene is great and is undeniably great. And it really never ends until they pull it out of your hands at the very last second. And Mike has the same philosophy. He's a maniac, and he wants his things to be great and special and good and funny and sweet and emotional. And so we were real kindred spirits in that way. And he put up with a lot of a lot of craziness.
No, but it was, you guys helped make the movie 10 times better, so I'd do it again.
Yeah. And Mike, you don't have to worry, because Ulysses Grant, who won the Civil War, he was bottom of his class at West Point.
Nice.
Like he barely graduated.
Ulysses.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So Phil, you guys and all, Spider-Verse. Wow, this is coming off Spider-Verse and stuff. Like what attracted you to this project after because I figured you guys immediately would be jumping on another Spider-Verse or the next one.
Well, we've been
that
doing
as well.
that too. But
They do everything.
But yeah,
it's insane.
I think what the instinct was is like, what's the opposite of Spider-Verse? And I think that like the what we are always interested in doing is something that we haven't done before, and something that feels scary and it feels different. We're always just trying to go like, all right, well, can we push the boundaries of like what this medium does a little bit, like in some other direction now? And Mike's movie was so distinct and so like, whereas like Spider-Verse is the first time we ever did anything that was like cool on purpose.
Yeah.
And like Mike's movies, like so like the characters are so oblong and their like house is weird. There's like too much stuff in it, and it's just such a different on the mitochondrial level. It's like trying to do something else, which is to celebrate our like uncoolness and remind us that that's our superpower, that's our humanity. And so that seemed like a really worthy goal.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that Mike and Jeff really had this like manifesto that they wanted to like change the way that animated movies look and felt, and they had all these things going like, pupils don't need to look realistic. We can just do dots for our pupils, and people's houses don't need to look like showrooms that everything's clean and everything. And
Mike, those are just for you. All right, Mike, challenge accepted. Boat race, water boat race.
Keep going.
And then when we talked to him about like, well, what do you want this movie to look like? Because coming off of Spider-Verse, the whole team at Sony was really didn't want to go backwards. They wanted to go forward. They're like, we broke all the pipelines. We made something that looked different than anything you've ever seen before. Yeah. Let's do it again, but in a different way. Yeah. And so Mike was, wanted the look of the film to have this sort of handmade watercolor illustration look. And so we were like, all right, let's do it. And then got the teams to like try to hit that look, which was his own series of challenges, and had to re-break the pipeline again and change all the software again to figure.
They were mad at us because they're like, we just learned how to do the opposite of this. Now you want what? No, we're not doing it.
But that was funny because that was sort of like the money people, but all the artists were so revved up. They were like, we're not going back, baby.
Yeah,
And it
yeah.
was really cool. It was sort of like, I don't know, you guys are nerds, right?
I
The
don't
episode
know.
of Samurai Jack where he has the boulders on his back and he's jumping. Some of you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, it was just cool that the Spider-Verse team was so excited at the possibility of doing new things that they were like, and what else can we do? And what else can we do? And we're like, well, we have this idea. And they're like, great, we love it. And like, is this okay to do this idea?
A
And
lot
they're
of the
like,
same
"Yes."
animators and crew members and leads that like rolled onto this movie, and we had broken them and turned them into like punk rockers, like the most responsible. They had all like gotten where they got because they were responsible, good people, diligent, and we're like, tell your boss, no, you're not turning it in. And so then we had this like weird like garage band like made out of those folks, and then they were all. It's true that the culture of the place was really pumped up to make something that they didn't know how to make.
Yeah, I mean, what was so great about Spider-Verse was like, I remember seeing it and thinking, like before Spider-Verse came out, everybody was like, okay, Incredibles 2, all right, that's it, that's the Oscar this year. And then you're like, holy shit, it's like somebody actually likes comic books. It's like finally a comic book movie done by people who like comic books. Because it had that kind of irreverent, but I love the way. It played with the graphics style, it wasn't just like pointing a camera at people doing real things, like it used the medium.
Well, and as somebody who sort of, I saw Spider-Verse not in a theater, but on a screener in my office right before Christmas break, like 2 years ago. And my producer's like, hey, dude, I got Spider-Verse. We were like passing it around like drugs. Like, I got Spider-Verse, dude. And then I was like, oh, dude, what's up? I'll check it out. Lock the door. Don't tell mom. And then I watched it. And my like hair was blown against the wall. Yeah. And it was so wonderful to have this like permission to like go as far as you want to go. Yeah. And it was also really cool to have these guys sort of like just cheering us on. And I had a great point. Falling away from me now, but
another bottle of water.
Yeah, I need another bottle of water. But it was just so exhilarating, and it sort of gave us like a license to do all these ideas that we were sort of a little timid to maybe try, and then the fact that everyone really responded to it was really wonderful.
And I think technologically speaking, the tools that were built for Spider-Verse, like they were a stepping stone to the tools that we needed for this. Yeah. Like we actually like, even though like to make the movie look like this, like a maniac 17-year-old film student like did it, and to really feel the hand of like Katie Mitchell made the movie, we had to like the computer had to unlearn all this stuff and learn how to like draw and paint like a 17-year-old woman.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, how early was the decision made? All those emojis and all the like little 2D, things popping up all around and everything. Was that at the beginning, or you were like partway into the film before you decided, oh, let's try that?
That was like an ambition early on, because we were so like excited about the possibility of making a movie. I had all these boxes on the wall. One was like, make it look anything unlike you've ever seen, and one was like, make the greatest animated movie of all time. We didn't get that one yet. I think Miyazaki still has the title, but we're striving for it. But we wanted to sort of make it. We wanted the movie to be as human as possible, because it's like a celebration of like humanity. So we wanted every frame to radiate that. And one of the best ways we could think of was to have actual drawings on the screen, and then that only made sense as like sort of an interesting formal idea until we realized that like, oh, we could make it like Katie, who is a filmmaker, is like editing the movie, and she's commenting emotionally on all the things that you're seeing. And we learned in that way we could sort of make the audience feel closer to her through these things, because sometimes they felt ornamental, but whenever they were reflecting Katie's sort of interior life, they felt really right and made you feel closer to her. And people actually in the sort of comment cards and stuff liked Katie more after we did all that stuff, because it was like, oh, the perspective of the movie is her perspective.
Yeah.
And it was really, and in that way, it was really wonderful.
And the look of it was really developed by the production designer, Lindsay Oliveris, and she just said, I think I know what I want it to look like. And one weekend just went home and did a crazy, like, I don't even know how to describe
It's like
it.
a mandala of madness.
Yes. That she then like sort of animated herself and was like, okay, what if it looked like this? And then we were all like, whoa, that's crazy. And I love it. And no one's ever seen anything like it. And it's the work of an insane person. But let's harness that insanity and put it on screen. And so, you know, that it was the kind of passion that Mike really inspired a lot of people on the crew to have agency, to pitch ideas, to go after things. Alan Hawkins, who was the lead animator on the film, was like, I've got an idea of how to make the PAL Max Plus, the big scary robots, move in a way that isn't just like walking around. And he built a tool to slice the shape up and have it form and reform, and then again on the weekend was like, I thought, wait, what if it looked like this? And we were all like, that's incredible. And then he taught the rest of the animation team how to use the tool, and then they like built on that and developed it further, and then it just became a really cool thing that you'd never seen before. But the fact that that everyone was open to all these ideas allowed the whole thing to feel like a big team being creative together.
I think that hiring of Lindsay was like a real inflection point
Yeah.
for the movie, because Mike came to us and said, I love this woman. She does these really cool things on Instagram. She has some experience, but she's never been a production designer. But this is what I think the movie should look like. And we looked at the stuff and we're like, oh man, this is not only beautiful, but it's so based on observation. It's such, you could tell that this person knows how to look and listen and not just draw. Like, it has to look like this. And we convinced the bosses that like this, rather than like, first it was like, who can we find that can draw like this person? Like, that's the wrong question. Let's hire this person and let's support them with the, with the expertise that maybe she doesn't know yet, and because she is the soul of how the movie's going to look. And we made a lot of choices like that, which were about like making it distinct, taking a chance on somebody, and taking risks, because the movie had to distinguish itself, and feel different from everything else. And that made a tremendous difference. And you feel the energy of like somebody making their first movie, because everybody kind of is making their first movie. And it's really exciting.
The most expensive student film ever made.
All time.
I like
Right, Sony, we got your money. Sorry, don't cancel that. Edit that out.
That's right. No, that's actually a good question, because I think, like, as producers, I mean, we're dealing with big studios. We're dealing with studios of like here's $200 million, and you better not screw it up. And
That's how it works.
yeah, right. There you go.
Here's a
There
sack
you
with a
go.
dollar sign on it.
It's your money.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
this is today's the anniversary of when Charlie Brown Christmas premiered.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And Bill Melendez used to tell me stories about the CBS executives, like they hated it and everything. They just said
Oh, for
jazz
sure.
music, and there's no laugh track,
Yeah.
and there's a Bible passage in the middle of it, and
That
and-
thing
and
is
it's-
really far out.
yeah,
really great.
yeah. They said they watched it in stone silence, and then when the lights came up, one guy tapped Melendez on the shoulder and said, "You guys did your best." It's like the most successful TV series,
Special of all time.
and
That's
all time,
amazing.
Yeah. So I'm wondering,
Totally distinct, like how it feels.
it's so different.
Going into your face is so unusual.
Yeah, it's just so unusual, But it's like, so did you guys? I mean, you guys had to successfully deflect people above. Like, was there like money people going like, what the hell are they doing? What is
For
this,
sure.
This juvenile looking thing? What is the hell?
We thought our first job was basically to sort of promise the studio that they wouldn't regret making the movie. Basically, that we felt like that was our job, is sort of protect Mike and Jeff and the whole team, and to say like, look, trust us, we've done good things for you, and
Yeah.
I know you didn't know if it was going to be good or not, but it's always worked out. You gotta trust us. It's
Producing
gonna-
this movie was an exercise in selective lying. Like just every once in a while.
Right.
I also selectively lied. I remember one time, because I was only the creative director on Gravity Falls, and I one time told the producer, but I never really made that clear to Sony. And I remember telling the producer, like, I've never really directed anything before. He's like, closed door. He's like, you're not going to say those words ever again in this building. Just be cool. All right, this never happened. Threw down a smoke bomb.
Did you go with was it recently? I guess like Mel Brooks in his memoirs said like the way he would deal with producers was every time they'd say, "Oh yeah, you can't do that. You got to get rid of that." He goes, "Okay, it's out." And then
They wouldn't do anything. Yeah, I saw that.
Heard this. This is in his new book,
Yeah,
right?
just say yes to everything.
Yeah, that's an incredible skill.
Yeah, what a great idea.
Well, and these guys were great because sort of their sort of always motto is like prove it out, and I think that's like good if there's like if you guys are making student films or you're having like I remember when I was a student I would have arguments with people for like an hour and a half over a shot in a short film or something, and in that hour and a half you can try it both ways, watch it and figure out which is better and move on with your life. Like we did that so many times on the movie. If the executives were sort of like nervous about something, because rightfully so, they've got a lot of money tied up in this thing. I'd never directed anything before, which they didn't know, but they could feel. And then so we're like, okay, well let's show it, and then we would show it to people, and then our theory was people will love this, and if they did, the studio would be like, all right, go with God.
The audience really decides at the end of the day, and you're like, and in the case of this movie and every movie, sometimes you're like, no, this is great, and then you put it up, and you're like, see, it was great, everyone loved it. They're like, okay, you're right. And then other times you put it up, and they're like, okay, you're right, that didn't work. We're gonna get rid of it.
Yeah.
And
Like a laugh is an involuntary experience.
Yeah.
You know, so like if you guys laughed at something, like I'm sorry, like
Yeah.
you're not like we didn't brainwash you. And by the way, if we did, then great, like good for me. It still worked.
I was told by the old guys when I started, they go, never argue with a laugh.
That's
Laugh
cool.
means it works. Like, yeah.
true.
Yeah.
And you can tell when an audience is engaged. You
Yeah.
can tell when they're shifting in their seat and looking at their watch and going on a bathroom break. And you don't have to even get the comment cards or hear the focus group afterwards. You know when you're watching the movie. It's a really painful experience to sit in the back of a theater and watch a bunch of strangers watch something that you've been working really hard on.
Oh, yeah.
But it's so necessary because you're not making these things just for yourself as a special little jewel box for yourself.
Yeah.
It's a contract with the audience. They have to trust you
Yeah.
that you're taking them on an experience that they're going to enjoy and show them something new and unique and special and has something to do with the world that we live in. And so because of that, you have to see how it plays and then keep adjusting it until the audience, it really resonates.
Yeah.
And it's the most terrifying and horrifying experience.
It's an amazing thing how like when you show stuff to test, and I didn't believe it until I actually saw it in front of a test audience, that like jokes that you thought would absolutely kill, you fought for it, don't worry, it's going to work, it's great, so just lay there, and then sometimes the way somebody said something or the way two shots cut together cracks up everybody else.
yeah.
I know, you never know what it's going to be, and it's so sensitive. It might be like the mix is weird,
Yeah.
or like like that angle isn't right, and nobody's. I mean, somebody might be. Maybe PTA is. Like, I'm not smart enough to like know all that ahead of time. You have to like go and watch it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to ask, like, who's the inspiration for Munchie the dog? Munchie's
It's a real
that
dog.
was a real dog who was originally named Maggie,
Ah.
but my sister decided this is no Maggie. This is a monster, and her name is Monchi-Chi, after the 80s toy. And Monchi was like wall-eyed, full of spirit, ran into walls, very enthusiastic. And the thing that I like about Monchi in the movie is Monchi's sort of like this like avatar for the family, she is Monchi is trying his best and cannot pull it off, but he's the fact that he's trying kind of makes you root for him. And I feel like that's sort of the story of the whole family. Like, even though they're not pulling it off, seeing them try to come together is hopefully...
They're wall-eyed themselves.
Yes, exactly.
They're going for it.
Yeah. And I love the run-on joke of the robots trying to analyze him, and he goes, "Is he a loaf of bread? Is he a pig? Is it a dog? What is it?"
That came from an actual dog, actual loaf of bread
I
shaped.
believe it. Yeah. So
But the payoff is like it started with that joke, right?
Yeah, no. It's,
Then we were like, how do we make Manchi useful?
Well, and that is sort of a thing about the movie where it's sort of like we found ways to thread in and give every character their little hero moment and thread things in the beginning of the episode, the movie to sort of have them pay off at the end, and I think that we just like love the characters so much we wanted them all to have their little hero moment and try to give them all dimension and life and love.
now, with this type of production, was this the kind of thing where like stuff was done in like several cities and you were networking computers and?
I mean, yes, we had an animation crew. Some of them were up in Vancouver. But a lot of people in LA. But we started it in person and then finished it all in our homes because of this crazy pandemic and obviously the relevance to a family coming together during like a global apocalyptic event felt. For the record, we had nothing to do with the origins of COVID.
It's not.
An attempt
That
to
is
make this movie
that is
extra-
disinformation.
Anything you read about that online is not true.
The smear campaign.
But it really especially informed the fact that we were trying to we didn't want to just be like, oh, phone bad, stop looking at your tablets, kids, because that seemed really reductive and dumb. And there was a whole, we wanted to show, certainly from Katie's side, how she uses technology for creativity and to be in touch with people around the world that share her interests and all the positive sides that technology can give us, as well as show how it can be used in an unhealthy way, and try and find a balance in that story. And, especially when we were finishing it on Zoom, the idea that we would end the movie with a Zoom call seemed really relevant and important.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I was just wondering, like, how you were able to keep on top of the continuity and stuff with everybody so spread out. Like, did you ever have problems with, like, some artists were just going off in the wrong direction or something, or just, like, trying to riff on something and going out there somewhere, and you're like, no.
I mean, our thing is the opposite. It's like, that guy's doing something nuts. Like, everyone follow that guy.
Oh, okay.
I mean, a lot of people were in the building, and I mean, it was a real. The feeling there was like this is a crazy garage band, and we're all and Mike was giving everybody a clear map of the direction to go, and everybody was trying to add their own stuff to it. And because it had this sort of mixed media vibe, we had artists that would like make a dinosaur puppet out of felt and forks from the cafeteria and then shoot it on a blue screen in her office and then comp it into a shot in the movie, and it is in the movie. It's not
And when you say blue screen, she's making, I don't know if you've ever like been a kid and you get the construction paper and the flapping thing. She just pulled 6 of those out and taped them together in her office. This was not a professional green screen.
Oh my God.
But sort of that was sort of the aesthetic too, because it's like if we wanted to try to make it seem as close to what a 17-year-old could pull off in her room as possible. And oftentimes we had to give the note like, this looks like a professional artist made it. And they're like, I am a professional artist. They're like, no, it's kind of, get in touch with your naive
Or like
17-year-old self.
use your left hand.
Yeah,
That's right.
like-
Yeah. So, well, I think it's time that we should get some questions from the audience. So, does anybody have anything you want to ask? Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, we did have say over it. The studio called us and was like, "Look, we have this movie. We don't know when families are going to want to feel comfortable being in a windowless room for 2 hours. We can hang on to it for a long time until we think it'll make money, or we've got Netflix who's seen it and loves it and wants it and wants it out there, and it seems really relevant to what's going on in the world right now, and do we want to like withhold that from the world that could use a little joy right now?" And Netflix loved it so much it was really hard to see a reason to hang on to it. So the decision was really easy, and because of that, so many eyeballs saw this movie. Yeah. So many people saw this movie. So many more. I don't know if it would even be released right now yet. At this point,
families and friends saw it together when they, when we were all kind of stuck together.
Yeah. And as for the future of theatrical original movies, I'm an optimist about that. I think that once everyone is feeling comfortable with it again, it's still like
it's
a weird time.
It's insane to draw conclusions of like from what is happening
an emergency
right now.
Yeah.
Because every week someone goes, "Oh, Omicron, here it comes," and now everyone's like, maybe we'll wait until it comes out in the thing. And,
no, but yeah, it's like when it stops being scary, to like take. It's like one thing to like go yourself to a movie. It's another thing to like take the kids and grandma.
Yeah.
And
right.
So I wonder if that has something to do with it. But it's an incredibly small sample size.
But so I'm hopeful and confident that, and I think that the fact that so many people saw this movie and liked it would hopefully, inspire studios to have confidence that they can tell stories that don't have to be based all on IP or existing content. They can tell original stories, and if they do them in a way that's unique and good and original, if you're giving somebody something new, give them a reason to go to the theater and not wait for it to be at home.
I do think we have to be mindful about training audiences that if you just wait 3 weeks, this movie will show up in your house.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or that it's also on at your house at the same time that it's in the theater.
That was kind of a weird
Whereas I
thing.
do think that like I'm very curious that I'm optimistic that No Way Home is going to perform really well, and knock on wood. And I think one of the reasons is like the only way you can see it is in the theater.
Yeah. I think it's like I've been around long enough that I can remember years ago when people said, "Oh, everything's going to be 3D, everything's going to be with the glasses. No more traditional movies will ever be made ever again." That's over. And then before that, well, actually in the 70s, people would say things like, "All that full animation shit you guys love, that went out with the economics of the Great Depression. The future is Yellow Submarine, more Yellow Submarine."
I'd be
love
fine
some
with
more
more
Yellow Submarine. Would be great, but
So whenever people discuss trends, you're like,
I think you got to watch out for the words always, never.
Right. And I think that the death of cinema has been predicted many, many times.
Yeah, when synthesizers came in like 1981, like Chariots of Fire and all, people said there's going to be no more garage bands, there's going to be no more orchestras, there's going to be no more jazz quintets. Everything's going to be synthesizer. Everything will be electronic forever and ever and ever. Amen. I'm like, no, everything's the same. So, yeah. So we need another. Which go? We'll get you. So.
Thank you guys for coming. I like kind of all your peculiar, very, very peculiar styles, and they always stand out, like even in the middle of the blockbuster. It's always recognizable. So I was wondering, do you remember a moment when maybe when you were very, very young, when you actually kind of found your voice and you looked at your own work, writing, directing, whatever it was, saying like, "Oh, that's usually weird," or that can stand out.
I mean, it was always weird. I don't know if beautiful was how I would describe it. but I bet, Mike, you're the same way. I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but the first movie I ever made, I was in the 5th grade. I was in a public school. They ran out of books, readers for us to read, so they just set us loose in the library, and the librarian had a video camera. And we made these comic books and to sell them in the school store at a great loss to ourselves. And we did a commercial to make the ledger even worse. We made a commercial for the thing, and we figured out you could start and stop the camera and make like a visual effect of like people popping in and out. And so it was just like dumb jokes and people popping in and out of the frame and like bouncing around, and it was super weird and mystified everyone who ever watched it. And you made equally weird movies growing up.
Yeah, the same thing. I made like little cardboard box cities for our cat to knock over as though it was a Godzilla. And I remember making a puppet turkey for Thanksgiving one time and then having it like do crowd work before dinner and then sitting down at dinner and the turkey comes out and he goes like, Uncle Larry. And my grandmother was like, honestly, that boy.
It's still a good bit.
I know.
Still not bad at all.
I was like 10. And
It's
I
a
knew,
genius.
what was I going to do? What was I going to do with my life? Just this nonsense. But I'm glad that we found each other.
Yeah.
Let's go another question. There's a guy all the way in the back. So. Or lady.
Oh, I would say, because I came from TV. I think this is the question. Tell me if it's not. Just give me a big thumbs down. But
Like how much animation experience should you have to write for animation?
I definitely think you should. I would definitely 1,000,000% suggest ramping up, because I know a lot of kids that are like, I'm going to make a TV show, and I was like, what have you done before? And they're like, nothing. And it's so hard to make a TV show. It's so hard to make a movie. Like, it was brutally hard. Like, I'm glad the movie appears joyful, because there are many nights where I was like crying on the floor, like, it's never gonna be good. Honey, I'm gonna be a teacher. This is a failure. So I would just say it's really difficult. And the thing that I did that really sort of helped me and I would suggest all you guys do, and I'm sure you're doing it if you're going to USC, is make shorts first. You know, the shorter the better. Minute long, 2-minute long, 4-minute long. Like, I would really slowly ramp into it. And I do think that the fact that these guys had the same path, but it's like making a TV show really sort of primed you for movies. But I will say movies is the hardest thing I've done. So I would really work your way into it.
Yeah, the longer it is, the more on a story level you have to care, because the more impatient you get. You can skate by quickly if you're making a 3-minute, 4-minute short with a fun idea and a crazy thing you haven't seen before. And in a 22-minute episode of television, you can kind of skate by with like some clever tricks and like a little bit of emotion, but you can't sit through 90 minutes without really emotionally investing.
Yeah.
And so the longer it is, the more emotionally deep it has to be, and that's really, really hard to do. And it just takes time and effort and practice, and there's a lot of different ways to get there. But it's really hard to do right out of the gate great the first time, and we certainly didn't.
But we didn't go to film school, but we
Right.
did make films, and
Mhm.
we drew them ourselves. And one of the things that's worth wasting a lot of your time on, because you're young and, you know, your bodies are invincible. You can eat garbage and never sleep, and you're still fine. So, but like, you know, we made films on like a flip book with like a piece of masking tape and like just doing 100 drawings under a camera, and that experience of just like making it frame by frame and really understanding on the granular level what the appeal of animation is, and really what cinema is, and making things move, and what movement can convey, I think is really helpful. That's always served us really well.
And writing for animation is especially such a visual medium that you have to be able to think of how do you tell your story in a visual way. And we always talk about like the airplane seat next to you when you have a movie on, and you can sort of follow what's happening. And you don't have the headphones, but you're kind of watching the stranger's screen, and because it's engaging.
Yeah.
That's especially true in animation, where like it has to be sound off, clear, and just visual, and not relying on just some people standing around talking, because it's just not gonna hold your attention.
Yeah. There's some little lady all the way in the back. Yeah, you.
I kind of think it's the same. It's a little bit of the same game, you know. It's sort of because when I had this big fight with Jeff Rowe, who is the co-writer of the movie, where I was upset. I was like, the whole reason we're making this movie is because it's about a family in a robot apocalypse who kidnaps the president. That's the reason to make the movie. And you'll notice there was no president in the movie not get kidnapped. He won that fight because we wrote both. He was like, I don't think this is necessary, Mike. And I was like, you're an idiot. And then he wrote his version and I wrote mine, and then we read it and I was like, ooh, this isn't looking good. And then we showed it to our friends. They're like, what is this president stuff? And then I was like, so I think it is like I kind of think it's the same process. It's less binary because it's harder to show to an audience to get like the big thumbs up or thumbs down, but that's where you develop a group of people that you trust, that you can go to, who are really honest with you, and that's like so important. Like, to bust your friends on their bad ideas. Like, don't be that nice. You know, be kind, but don't tell them their bad ideas are good.
No, you're serving them, right? But you're helping them by telling them like what didn't land for you. The other thing is like when you're having a theoretical, abstract conversation, you're always losing. You know, when you are like you wrote a scene and you're performing it or reading it out loud, and it's like, oh yeah, that's kind of lands, or it kind of doesn't. You know, that's like a lot more tangible and concrete, and now you can actually have a conversation about it. Whereas if you have a philosophical thing, that never gets resolved.
And then sometimes, you know, what Phil and I will do often is we'll talk through the beats of the scene that's written and go like, this isn't landing for me. What are you going for? And try and get behind what it is, and then try and figure out, okay, I see what you're going for, but maybe we could just make it more clear if we did this. Or I always thought that the character should be a little more sassy than this, or nicer, or sadder, or whatever it is, and then try and work through it that way. And then what's great about animation is that, you know, we would work through these scenes in animatic form, and because Mike is a great vocal performer, he was the oddly old-sounding child, Aaron, in this movie.
Sorry, guys. Sorry. Were you transported? Oh my God! As a child before me.
Where's the child?
We would often have a scene where this beginning part's working, but something's not working about the middle. We had Guillermo Martinez, who was the head of story on a Cintiq. And we'd be like, well, what if this happened? And you'd say, oh, what if this happened? And you'd grab the microphone, say the lines, just sort of improv a version of the lines that we're talking about. Guillermo would draw really quick, crude versions of the drawings, send them to the editor. He'd put it together. And while we were talking, you could see a very crude version of what we were saying. Yeah, I think that could work. And then we'd sort of refine it and just do it sort of like improv animation, which is insane.
Yeah.
But it was a great process, and you could just feel it in the room and see oh, this is working.
Don't you think you spend a lot less time worrying about whether someone is right or wrong with their opinion, and just sort of just embracing it and going let's just say they're right. Let's just say that their thought, their point of view is 100% true, at least to them, and that's meaningful to me. Are we recording this?
We are.
No. All right. I'll be slightly vaguer than I would have been. Yeah. But I spent the morning at 7 a.m. Recording a very famous, very, very good actor for Spider-Verse. And literally the first line, he was like, this doesn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense. And I was like, well, I had a choice, which was it makes enough sense that we all thought it made. And I watched the scene in animatic, and it makes sense. But I could either try to argue it with him, or I could just say that the very famous, successful, smart actor is right. And see what happens. And then we workshopped a new way to get through the scene. And it was a way that he could do a good job with because he understood it, and it also challenged some assumptions that we had about like that moment, and like, oh yeah, I can see how that could be better, and let's make it better. And we made it better, and that's just like a process that comes out of like comedy writing rooms and improv, which is like you just kind of take as fact that you're not going to convince somebody that their deep-seated feeling about whether something's funny or right or wrong is going to. You're not going to win that argument. And why would you want to? Because you hired the famous actor because he's so creative and talented, and that's why you hired him, is you want his point of view.
Let me get somebody on this side and everything. That's what to get you. Woo! What?
Mm-hmm. I would say sort of like I sort of as a little jerk have like this knee-jerk reaction to any screenwriting book, like, no, it's terrible. But I will say those it's good to know that stuff, but I would definitely say to not use it like a rule book. For example, much like I'm a lot like Charlie Kaufman in many ways, but the first way in which is sort of like I sort of like wrote off this, Robert McKee storybook, but at one point I was at my lowest ebb on the movie, and I was like, this story isn't working. And I was like listening to it on audiobook, and it felt like I was failing. I was like, ugh. But there was an insight in that, and I was like, oh, that made Act 2 better. So I do think that I do think those books can help, but sort of in terms of like how we broke the story, at least in this movie, sort of like I just started by writing an outline, which is like a 3 to 4. Writing an outline is the worst process in the world. It's so it's necessary, but it's really difficult because it's really just sort of like a colorless version of your story, where you don't get to do all the fun stuff like writing fun jokes and dialogue and stuff like that. But you do have to figure it out. And if you write like a 3-page version of your story, you could really tell if it's working or not if you read it out loud to somebody. Sort of my buddy Jeff, who co-directed the movie, one time was working on Gravity Falls, and he read me an outline that was a page long, and I started crying. And I was like, well, that's going to work. What we started doing was like just writing brief outlines, and then if we we'd sort of beat the outline up until we were sick of it, and then eventually we would just start writing scenes based on the outline and then adjust from there. And then we never stopped adjusting until the final day of the final mix, where my producer was like, close the laptop. He's like, you need to close final draft. The movie is over. He's like, we have finished.
Yeah. I was just wondering, like philosophically and everything. There's always the thing about one of our old producers at Disney. I won't give his name away, but he lost a lot of money on something called Quibi. But
you got 3 guesses. Go.
Hey man, I got tenure. You can't get me. You can't hurt me.
Meg Whitman.
Yeah. But anyway, he said he used to say like the emotional spine, or like the emotional through line, is like the Christmas tree, and the jokes are the balls and the decorations and everything. So he says, once I let you guys go, you're going to cover it with jokes and everything. But I want to make sure that the emotional thing. Or do you go by that, or do you think that like the humor has to come through out of character?
Well, certainly I think that humor should come out of character. But I do think, when you're thinking about a movie, you're like, where's the character start and where do they end? And what's the primary relationship, and what's the sort of hardship or crucible that they go through to get to a different place? And what sort of thematically are we trying to say? And those are some of the early questions that you're asking. And then when you're talking about character, like how are they specific and interesting and observed, and what makes them funny? What's funny about them or interesting, or can I hear that voice as a specific person, a type of person that I know has a lot of specificity, and how would this person behave in a specific situation? Sometimes when we're trying to think about characters, I do this thing I call the Cliff Clavin on Jeopardy test. which is there's a character on a show.
They don't know what
any of this
Cliff
stuff.
Clavin
That's
is.
all right. I'm going to tell you anyway.
They don't know what Jeopardy is, and they've never seen a television.
Everybody knows what Jeopardy is. There was a character on a TV show called Cheers named Cliff Clavin.
TV show is like a movie that could go to your house from an antenna.
He was like a blowhard know-it-all who always had these dumb facts all the time. And then there was an episode where he went on Jeopardy, and he knew all these weird arcane facts, and then blew it on the last final question. And it was this idea, like you knew when I was a kid, and you knew Cliff Clavin was going on Jeopardy in the next week's episode. Like that's I can't wait to see that because I can think of all the exciting things that he would do on that show. And I started thinking about like, oh, what would if Homer Simpson was on Jeopardy? You know, if any great character that you think is great was on Jeopardy, you're like, oh, I know exactly how they would behave because they're specific and have a voice and have a point of view of the world. And if you have a character and you go like, what would happen if they went on Jeopardy? You're like, I don't know, they'd do okay, I guess. They'd be reasonable. And that's not very interesting.
You want a character who's going to win or lose spectacularly.
Exactly. And so you want to have a character that's specific enough that if you put them in a random situation, you know how they would behave and what type of thing to do. And you can write that scene. Mm-hmm. And so I think if you don't have those things before you start going, you can sort of start to find it and go like this character isn't specific enough and start to just experiment. But you have to have those ideas or it's going to be mush.
That's how it works best.
That's true.
This is how it mostly goes. You go to the store, you buy all the Christmas ornaments you can possibly stuff in your pockets, and then you pile them up slowly. Over years, you pile up all of these delicious-looking Christmas ornaments, and then you're like, oh, fuck, we forgot to put a tree under that. Does anyone have a tree? Maybe we could use these sticks or straws. We need a tree. And then you sort of, well, maybe these 4 jokes, they're kind of like a tree. They could stack them up.
Yeah, you break the ornaments and mold them into a tree.
Yeah, it is a little bit like that because at some point you have to have a good time. Yeah. And the jokes are what make you like just want to get up in the morning and do stuff.
Absolutely. So, another one. Yeah.
Sure. No, I will say the way that because there's various real life stuff in the movie, and that's for a bunch of reasons. One, because we wanted it to really feel like the real world. You know, we had all these theories like, well, I've never seen, you know, because in an animated movie sometimes it's just like they'll be driving on a highway and it's like green highway, perfect suburban houses, no weird political signs on the front of their houses. You know, like the world has all this bizarre stuff in it. And once you start shaving the edges off that stuff, everything gets a little more boring and a little less specific and a little less interesting. So we were like, what if we have the craziest, most specific thing possible, which is a Furby, which is made by a lot of toys are made by like corporations. And the Furby was made by a crazy farmer who liked owls. And he's like, I think children would like a talking owl toy. And I was like, I like this guy's style.
You know what kids are into? A nocturnal predator that can turn its head 360 degrees.
That's what they want in their homes. So I wrote a letter to I asked the producers, like, let's the Furby people. They'll make a bunch of money. Who cares? They'll love it. I mean, you know, sure, it's horrifying, but we'll just ease them into it. And then he was like, no, go. And then I was like, And then we changed it. And it was
we tried a Tickle Me Elmo thing.
Elmo, who was like Immortan Joe, and he had an eye patch.
We had like we had a talking doll that had like her face ripped off and was like a T2 cyber thing underneath. And none of it was as funny as the Furby.
Yeah. So I've just found through sheer willpower someone's email that worked at Hasbro, and I wouldn't stop emailing me until he emailed me back, and he finally did, and then very slowly wrote a series of 18 emails to these people. And was like, look, we love Furby. We think it's really fun, and we think this could be good for everybody. And and the power of art and
Yeah.
filmmaking and
Selective lying.
Right.
yeah.
There you go. It's not creepy and terrifying and haunts our dreams.
We would just be like, we love Furby, and it's part of a fun scene, and then like it does say "Let the Dark Arrows."
But it is a win. This is an unquestioned net win for the Furby.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely.
Cultural cachet of the Furby.
They're selling them left and right these days. I don't know.
Yeah.
I assume.
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting point too that like with like Walt Disney made a conscious decision like way back in the 30s whatever to try to like not date the films, like the thing should be timeless. And then Warner Brothers went the other way and they used all the pop culture, all the pop phrases and things. I'm still getting jokes, but it's like, did you ever think about that? That it's like because this is like very much in the in today. And well, Spider-Verse is kind of different because Spider-Man was the best Spider-Mans were written in the '60s, and they're still relevant. Like they still work. So, did you like think about that about?
It is extremely obviously relevant to now, but there isn't a lot of specific name pop culture references. And even like referencing the Furby, that was a toy from the 80s. It's not like, oh, next week the Furby's going to be out of style and suddenly no one's going to like it. So it's like you're still self-conscious about all that type of stuff. I think you don't want to do something that feels like this is only going to be relevant in the year 2021. And people will look on it in 2024 and be like, oh boy.
But also, like, I don't know. One of my favorite movies is McCabe and Mrs. Miller, and it's a Western set in the, like, 19th century, and it's also got music from the 70s.
The 70s,
and it's incredible, and it's just, it feels timeless in its own insane way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think a lot of our favorite art, including those Warner Brothers cartoons, like I love the Warner Brothers.
Right,
cartoons.
those are now considered timeless.
Oh yeah,
Right.
Yeah, because
There's a bunch of references to like
Humphrey
Frank
Bogart.
Sinatra. I'm like, I don't. As a kid, you're like, I have no idea what this
Taint
is.
Funny McGee. What is he talking about?
Yeah,
But it's like
yeah.
you go along with it. I think it's like people are smart and they'll figure stuff
Yeah.
out. And especially I think the films that I really love are the ones that are really specific to a time and place. And really specific to the real world. And there's this like Takahata quote where it's like the best fantasy comes from the firm springboard of reality. And I think that's really true.
That's good.
And so we were trying to sort of make our reality as much like the reality that you experience when you walk outside these doors as possible. So if a robot comes, you would be really shocked. Like if a robot dropped through this door, came down, started taking people hostage, it'd be horrifying.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if it happened in like a fantasy land, it wouldn't mean anything.
To me, like the antidote to all that stuff is just remembering that like your job as a filmmaker is not just to like write and say and show, but it's to look and to listen. And so in our, the kinds of things that we've made, it's like, there's so many like power lines, like on my drive to Sony Animation, like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, let's not delete the power lines. Let's just put like 1 million more in because that's what the world actually looks like. And that's what Mike did with his movie. But if you're making like a medieval fantasy movie, like Sleeping Beauty has like all this inspiration in like illuminated medieval manuscripts.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a character that is based on somebody like going to the library and being like, what did their art look like? And could we make something that paid attention or was inspired by that? And that to me is like the whole bag. It's like, you never want to do something that's nostalgic in that it is mannered and just repeating something that you liked in someone else's movie. And it's also not trying to like, I don't know, eliminate things that are interesting.
Yeah.
For what? To like make it more safe or more, I don't understand it. The more specific we made Miles Morales, the more people, like white people in Tucson, liked him. I don't understand it, but it was just they recognized another human being, and they were rewarded for going to the movie theater by seeing the world through a different set of circumstances, and they were glad about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. True. Yeah.
I love that Kathy is based on you.
Oh, hi! Nice to see you.
People realize because, we were saying it's genuine and people
feel that. But as far as I know, you didn't fight a robot army.
No.
So at what point did you detach your personal stories in order to tell the story? And what balance did you have to have?
No, yeah, we were actually just talking about that today, where it's like you really do have to. I put sort of as much as I could into it, but then you sort of invite all these great collaborators to put themselves into it too, and as long as those choices are specific and feel right, like for example, Lindsay Alvarez, who is our wonderful production designer, had Katie drawing on her pants. And I had friends that were like, "You stole that. I drew on my pants. You saw my pants." And I was like, "I didn't see your. That was my friend did that." And then she's like, "They're like, what? That was my pants. I'm the only one who drew heck yeah on my shoes, or whatever." And sort of like, and it sort of extended to every part of the process, like even to the extent that which like we had LGBTQ plus artists on the team who were sort of like, "Is Katie?" And we're like, I don't, let's talk about it, and they were like, do it, go, and it was really wonderful to work with them and sort of have them, sort of work with them to sort of make that feel more honest to them, and it was like this process of sort of like every step of the way and every new, and sort of the same thing he's talking about, Miles, like every specific thing we added to Katie, someone literally was like, I made a movie with my pug and he was a cop, like no joke. Somebody sent me that tweet and they're like, they sent me the video, and I was like, oh my god, this is the best. So it's like I really do think that in the civic you sort of find universals.
I had a scene in a Roger Rabbit where like Baby Herman threw a temper tantrum by slamming his face on the floor. It's going bam, 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 and like that. And the director was like, I don't know, I think that's a bit much. That's a bit too much. And then my wife, who was a babysitter, she said, yeah, I babysat a kid who did that. like okay. Okay, I'm going to do final questions. So let me grab this lady. Sorry.
Oh, nice. Great. No, that's great.
They all sounded like Mike.
And we actually showed the movie once to a whole group of people where I was doing literally every character except Katie, and it was not good. But it really was, because it was sort of, since it was inspired by my family, I was like, well, we need to find people who sound exactly like my mom, and who sounds exactly like my dad, and it sort of turned out that wasn't sort of that wasn't the best process. The process that ended up working out is like, who are performers that we love, that make us laugh, and that are always great in movies, and no matter what like level of success they're at. And Sony was really great because they weren't like, we need Ariana Grande for Katie, we need can we get Hiddleston as Rick, like it was really nice. They were like, hire who you think is great, and then we would have Lindsay's drawings of the characters with like, we'd throw 10 different voices up, or really like 80 different voices up, and just try to see and try different actors with other actors. And it was like awesome where we found Abby Jacobson. I mean, we didn't find her. I like Broad City is like one of my favorite shows of all time. And she is from the Midwest. She she went to art school. She had like Katie's exact story. So every improv she did was like perfect. So it was really just finding people that we really loved.
But unexpected choices too. Like, we need like a tech bro.
Yeah.
And then like, I don't know how we came across Eric Andre, but like, you might not expect if you like watch his like kooky show. But then you like listen to his voice without the rest of it, and you're like, oh yeah, that's totally what that guy sounds like.
We played that like there's this skit where Eric Andre is like, "Can I get a hit of that ranch?" and he's like super sloppy. And then we played it against Olivia Colman, who was like, "What are you doing?" And it was like those two next to each other was like, "That's gonna be a good time." You know, so it was a lot of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. Well, guys, I think we're wrapping up now. So I want to thank you very much and everything.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
This
Thanks
was
for
a lot of
having
fun.
us. Oh my god.
Thanks
Yeah.
for sticking around late
Thank
at
you,
night.
guys.
Mike and everything.
I know you have homework.
Congratulations. Yeah. Everybody have fun. Good luck with the traffic out there. It's insane and everything. So hopefully. So
Crawl home.
Thanks, guys.
yeah.
Thank you, everyone.